Evening. Hope you're all doing well. Maseches Taanis Daf Yomi on the third line. We have spoken a little bit about fasting and about times of famine, and the Gemara picks up right there in that sugya on the third line of Yud Aleph Amar Aleph Amar Rav Yehuda Marav Kol Amarev Atzmo B'Shnei Re'avon. Whenever a person makes themselves hungry, meaning they don't eat a lot during the times of famine, so then Nitzal Mimisa Meshuna, then they won't die an abnormal death. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, "B'ra'av padachami maves," that in a famine you will redeem yourself from death. But the Gemara picks up on this. What do you mean b'ra'av? Should be me'ra'av padacha, that you from the famine you save yourself. Me'ra'av mi baile, says the Gemara. You're absolutely right. Ella, how then do we understand the pasuk? The letter beis of b'ra'av has to be understood to represent another word. Ella hachi kamar. Here is pshat in the pasuk. B'schar shemariv asma b'shnei re'avon, as a reward for keeping yourself hungry during the times of famine, not eating more than you should. Nitzal mimisa mishuna, end of part 1. And then says the Gemara, Amar Reish Lakish, that during that time, that a person is not supposed to have tashmish hamita during that time if there is a famine. It says that he had children before the Ra'av kicked in. If you take a look at the Balei HaTosfos, this, even though this is quoted in it is quoted in Shulchan Aruch, but Tosfos here has an important shita. It says Tosfos at the top of the page, Dibur Maschal Asr La'adam. Tosfos says, V'im Tomar, Harei Yocheved Nolda Ben Achomos. She was born at a time where we knew exactly when she was born. V'oso Eis Rav. It was a time of famine. V'al Korchach Shimshu Mitosein B'Shnei Re'avon. Her parents must have conceived her at a time of famine. V'yesh Lomar, the Gemara says, Delekule Alma Lo Habe Aser Elo L'Misha Rotze Linhog Atmo B'Chasidus. That there are times that if a person wants to be nohig b'chasidus and limit themselves from tashmish hamita, that's appropriate. And Tosfos concludes with Yosef, the pasuk, which was the text proof for this idea. Yosef lo shimish aval shar b'nei adam shimshu. So I've had this discussion with my rabbi. If you look in the poskim, there are some nights of the year the couples are not meant to be together on Rosh Hashanah, and there's a whole long list of them. So my Rebbe told me a couple of years ago, he said this applies for people who are good with it. It doesn't apply to everybody. You have to understand it's not a din in Shulchan Aruch. It's a minhag that's mentioned in the poskim. It's not even a minhag, it's a midas chasidus. You have to know how to balance these things out. If the other option is an avera rachmana litzlan, then of course, pashat, that's the case, that the minhag chasidus is trumped by Yetzer Hara. That's for sure. That's for sure.
It says also, it doesn't say that it's a minhag chasidus.
Yeah, 100%. That's a great touch in the Gemara, but that is not what it means. It's not how Tosfos understands it. And the language of the Tosfos that he answers here is the lo have aser ela lemisha rotze linog atzmo. So it's aser for the guy who wants it to be aser. That's how Tosfos understands the word aser. It's a great touch, and Tosfos plays off of that. Lo have aser ela lemisha rotze linhog atzmo bechasidus. Then it's aser for you, but for everybody else, it's not aser.
The article brings from the mitzvah a way to be miyashavus.
Yeah, and this works even by the Balei Tosfos. It works. He just says that the aser is not across the board. It's aser is only for those for whom the midas chasidus applies. Anyways, this does come up in halacha. This does come up in poskim about times during the year when a couple should not be together. Ask your local Orthodox rabbi how to balance that out. Says the Gemara, even according to Yosef, who wanted to be machmer on himself, Tana chasuche vanim mishamshin mitosen b'shnei re'avon. But people who have yet to fulfill the mitzvah of peru or vu, so then trump card. Then the minhag doesn't apply to you, and if you don't have children yet, then you're obligated to continue to try and have children. There are very rare exceptions to that. This shaila comes up with birth control. We know that there's a mitzvah saseh shel Torah that one is obligated to bring children into the world, boy and girl, machlokas rishonim, what actually the din is. So the poskim say, and when I was in Smicha, they were very sharp about this. Not everybody, birth control is not water. You have to ask a shaila before you're on birth control. You have a mitzvah to put on tefillin. You don't just not put on tefillin one morning. That's ridiculous. That doesn't make any sense. Mitzvah, as I say, to have children. So in order to get a heter for birth control, you need a real halachic shaila. I've had students over the years who ask me these questions, which I immediately pass on to those far greater than myself. I never answer them on my own. And invariably, the question always follows, is this couple healthy? Do they have a good marriage? Are they going to be able to raise a reasonably good child? All the shilas that come up. And one of the things that is the motivator is prurvu, because once a couple already has fulfilled the mitzvah for prurvu, then getting a heter, as it were, for birth control is easier. But one should not take it lightly, because it is a mitzvah saseh shel Torah. It's a bittul aseh. If a person takes birth control without reasonable reasons behind it, it could be a bittul aseh. The Gemara continues about 12, 15 lines down in Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. Tanu Rabbanan Bizman Yisrael Shurin B'tzara. If there is a time, Rahman al that the Jews are having a difficult time, Upiresh Echad Mehen, and one Yid says, I'm out. I'm not interested in this. So then what happens to him? It's not good. The two angels that generally accompany a person, they come up to him. Al Rosho, they put their hands on his head, and they say, this guy who separated himself from the pack, Al Yerah ben Echamas Tzibur, he won't see the comfort side, he won't see the other side of the coin, he's only going to see the bad parts. It's not good. Tanyidach, another brisa very similar, 3 lines before the wide lines, the brisa reads, Bizman she'atzibur sharu b'tzar al yomar adam elich lebeisi v'ochel v'eshte v'shalom alayich nafshi. That at a time when the Jews are having a hard time, you shouldn't be at home fressing. It's not right. V'mosa kain, if a person does that, Allah b'kasuv omer, the pasuk says about him. The pasuk reads, "B'hinei sasan v'simcha." This is a regular day of happiness and joy. Harog bakar. I'm going to shecht an animal v'shachot tzon. I'll kill a bakar, I'll shecht tzon, echol basar v'shasos yain. I'll be eating meat and I'll be drinking wine. Echol v'shaso ki machar namus. I know things are bad. Machar namus, we're going to die tomorrow, but I'm porish midarki atzibur. I'm porish from the tzar of the people. And maksiv basrei. What's the pasuk that follows this one up? So it says the Gemara, v'nigla be'oznei Hashem tzavakos im yichupar ha'avon hazeh lachem ad temusun. This sin is not going to be repaired ad temusun until you die. That is a very sharp consequence. We have an obligation to be nosei b'olim chavero. That's what the Gemara says. And if there is a shas tzar and we separate ourselves from the shas tzar, we are bringing upon ourselves an onesh. And then says the Gemara, almost halfway down at the second of the wide lines, ad kan midas beinonim. This is only talking about a regular person. What did the pasuk say about this person? At least he knows that machar namus, that things are very bad, and I know things are very oppressive. Okay, I'm going to go home and fress, and that's the wrong thing to do, but I'm a beinani. What about the Rasha? Aval b'midas rishayim maksiv. The pasuk says, in regards to the Rasha, a sayu ekcha yain, I'm going to go get some wine, the nispa shechar, and I'm going to get drunk on beer, the hayach yom machar, and it's going to be just like this tomorrow. He doesn't know that people are going to die. He's a real Rasha. He's not even looking out at the needs of the people. He's a real Rasha. Maksiv basrei. What's the pasuk that follows? So the pasuk that follows reads that tzaddik avad, the tzaddik, the righteous, will be lost. Ve'ein ish sam alev, and there's going to be no one paying attention. Ve'asimu tachtav, and someone will be replaced by him. Vayeshev aleha. Sorry, I skipped a line here. Ve'ein ish sham alev ve'anshe chesed ne'asafin. Okay, so that's what the Gemara says here. The pasuk reads a little differently in the actual pasuk. It's going to be bad. The tzaddikim are going to die because of this. So we should not be ignoring the problems that are happening. And the Gemara tells us what we therefore should do. So what should we do? Says the Gemara halfway down. A person should be b'tzari matzibur. Shekain matzina b'Moshe Rabbeinu shetzir atzmo matzibur. We know that Moshe Rabbeinu did the same thing. Where do we see this in the Torah? Many places, I'm sure. We all know the famous stories of Mitzrayim, that he went to go see B'sivlos Mitzrayim, but that's not what the Gemara brings. Shneimar, Yudei Moshe kvedim, Moshe's arms were very heavy. Vayikhu even v'yasimu tachtav v'yeshev aleh. They put a stone under him, fine, and he sat on it. He had nothing comfortable to sit on. Why did he sit on a rock? This is the right way to show empathy, to care for those around you who are going through difficult things. Anyone who shows this empathy and they put themselves in tsar when the tzibur is in tsar, then that will be the case, that they will also be the ones who can see the result and the healing from that difficult time. Says the Gemara, no one's going to know. I'm home by myself, four closed walls. I'm eating, but leave me be. Who's going to even testify against me? Not like me. It's a strange question. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a chokia rumavin. Why does it? Okay, so the Gemara gives a couple of strange answers. The Gemara says, Avnei beso shel adam v'koros beso shel adam edim bo. The Eidim who are going to be against him are the witnesses that are the stones and that are the walls, or v'koros beso, the beams of his house. Shenemar ki eben makir tizak. The stones are going to scream out. And from the bricks they're going to call out. Another possible answer as to how this person who's not being B'tzari Matzibor, another possibility as to how everyone will find out is the Bay Reb Shila Amrei Shnei Malachei Asher Samalavan La'adam Hein Me'idin Alav. The Eidim are going to testify against him, who are his malachim. Shenamar Ki Malachav Yitzav Alach. The next answer the Gemara says is Reb Chidka Omer Nishmaso Shel Adam Hi Me'id Alav. Your neshama is going to record this, and Biyom Adin is going to, the neshama will tell HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shene'emar Mishocheves Chaykecha Shemor Pisrei Picha, that which is within your chayk, that which is within you, which is your neshama. It's interesting because here it says that it's Chaykecha is in your chest, but if you ever have read the paragraph prior to Tefillin, it says HaNeshama Shebemochi. So I'm not holding in that if anybody knows where the neshama resides. There was a Dan Brown book about this. I don't know if you guys are Dan Brown fans, but in one of his books, he measured the weight of the neshama. There's no such thing, but somebody donated their body to science, right? So we discuss locations as though there is some type of physical presence. What does that mean? Okay, I don't know the answer to the question.
Points all throughout.
So that's not implied from this here.
It's one of the points.
Would probably imply that which
Why?
dwells in your lap.
It's throughout different parts of the body. It manifests itself.
I mean, assuming we're actually getting the physical characteristic.
Yeah, I mean, Haneshama Shebemochi is more explicit, but this is a pasuk. That's I don't know that and the paragraph before. Right. It's just a strange. I'm noticing splinters in the language because it's very. I just say Haneshama Shebegufi. Just we easily could have done it. I mean, the Baalei Kabbalah who wrote that, or the Sephardim, which are Baalei Kabbalah, it's the same thing.
I remember reading that in the Dan Brown book. Wasn't it called Noetics?
Okay. The one scientist in the room, I have no idea. I read the book 10 years ago. I certainly didn't read the book since Daf Yomi started because I haven't done anything since Daf Yomi started. So I have no idea. It's been a long time, at least 2 years. So that's what the Gemara says, that maybe the neshama will be the testimony. Maybe the limbs of the person will be the testimony. You're the witnesses. All right, let's darshan some.
The only thing we have as an example of how to express yourself is Moshe Rabbeinu. We don't have other examples here. I mean, if a person opens up, a person opens up a Heimish website, for those that would do such a thing, you could see tsar from top to bottom to the page, a sickness, a shooting, etc. I mean, one would be in tsar the Gans tug.
It's true. I without having thought about your question, just my chush when reading the Gemara was when it's clear that everyone's going through a tsar as a people. That's what it was. Just my own feeling. Right? Yeah, it's certainly not Yechidim. I certainly felt the language is Yisrael. That's what it's talking about.
It says Echad.
It says Echad.
It says that
no Bisman Yisrael Shiruyim
B'Tzar. People of Israel. So people of Israel could be either collectively as a group, or it could be
Moshe was when they were being attacked by Molech.
Right, that was a national thing.
It seems to be more global than individual. Certainly, absolutely, that's true. Everybody's got that peklach, that's for sure. I agree. 2/3 of the way down, we're going to start darshaning a pasuk. It's the pasuk we know. Let's break this up into pieces. What does it mean that Hashem is a God of emunah? That HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to get payment. He's going to get retribution by the Rishaim in the next world, even for an Avera Kala. See, the tzaddikim get back in this world, they get the onshin for their averas in this world, so that their olam haba is sweeter. So that way, this is already in the hashkafa of tzaddik v'rala rosh of atovlo, is that, and this is hard, but when one has that grasp of the things that happen to them in this world, are kapara, so then it's the small things, the small averas, they take their toll here in this world. So that's what the Gemara says, that kach nifrem nasig b'olam hazeh al avera kalash osin. Ve'ein avel, what does that part of the pasuk mean? Ve'ein avel, kishem she mishalmen schar letzadikim l'olam haba, just like the righteous get their reward in the next world, afilu al mitzvah kalash osin, even for the smallest of mitzvahs. So kach mishalmen schar l'rishoyim b'olam hazeh, afilu al mitzvah kalash osin, they're going to get their reward in this world. Again, all in the same vein, which is that the tzaddikim are those who deserve a greater olam haba, and the Rishayim are those who deserve a lesser great olam haba. That's why we should try to be tzaddikim. And the Gemara, just to be clear, the Gemara doesn't say that tzaddikim make no mistakes. That's not what it means. Everybody makes mistakes. That's not the point. The point is that we need to be begeder a tzaddik instead of being begeder a rasha. The Gemara finishes with the pasuk tzaddik v'yasharhu. Some challenges in the gears of the Gemara here. The Gemara should say melamed. What does this teach us? Teach us melamed shebeshas p'tiraso shel adam. Think about this imagery that Rahmana litzlan, after 120 years, when a person passes away, p'tiraso shel adam lebeis olamo, they go to the next world. Kol maasav niftarin lefanav. Kol maasav niftarin, or according to some, nifratin, that they're detailed in front of you, they're all written out. The omrim lo, and the people in the courts, the bailiff, lahavdil, will say to the person, omrim lo, they'll say to him, kach v'kach asisa, these are the averos and mitzvahs that you did, b'makom ploni, b'yom ploni, on this day, on that day, in this place. V'hu omer hein, you're absolutely right. V'omrim lo chasom, they say, all right, it's time to sign. It's time to sign on all of the ma'asim that you did. L'tivusa v'legriusa. B'chosem, he has no choice. Shenemar biyad kol adam yachtom. This is the dramatic language in Unasana Tokev. V'chosam yad kol adam bo. So it says the Gemara, v'lo od ela shematzdik alav esadin. That once a person's in this phase, he can see the yashrus of a Kodesh Baruch Hu, and he has to say that it's correct. V'omer lahem yafed dantuni. You've done an excellent job of judging me. It's funny, like hearing us being mishabeach a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Yeah. You did good. It's a funny, it's not for him, it's for us to be matzik esadin, The kaim mashenemar laman titzdak bidvarecha, that we should be yasher. The Gemara then has a general machlokes, a strange machlokes, about whether or not instituting a personal fast is a chet or is it b'kedusha. So Amar Shmuel, 10 lines from the bottom, that anyone who sits in a fast, they are considered a sinner. Where does this come from? Savar ki, by the way, the Balei Tosfos sharply argue with this. The second Tosfos it's become a Tosfos day. The second Tosfos on the page here points out that in Perek HaChovel and Bava Kama, that Shmuel argues the opposite, that a person is ra'ui l'chabel ba'atzmo, that is rishoi, and that is yeshiva b'tainis. So that's a stira within Shmuel, and you can see Tosfos there for the answer. But the Gemara, irrelevant of that, the Gemara doesn't ask that question. But the Gemara says, Savar ki haitana, must be that Shmuel, who over here says that fasting is considered a chet, must be like the following brisa that speaks about Nazirus. To Tanya, the brisa writes, Rabbi Yisrael kapar beRebbi Omer, Ma tamal omer v'chiper alav me'asher chatos al hanefesh, that he did something terrible to his nefesh. Well, who's nefesh? What are you talking about? He's a Nazir. What does that even mean? It wasn't an interpersonal avera. He did something wrong himself. Ella says the Gemara he did something wrong by making himself a Nazir, because now he's was mitzara himself that he can't have wine. Says the Gemara, so therefore Shmuel made a kal v'chomer. The Nazir who restricts himself from even only wine is considered a chote. Then a person who's fasting, then so that's actually, from a Mari Makomos perspective, that sounds like a very reasonable approach that Shmuel is taking. Again, the Tosfos notwithstanding, spend some time on that. The Gemara Tosfos does deal with that, but that's the shita of Rabbi Eliezer. That's what he says there. That is the sheet. What did I just say? Shmuel. That's the sheet of Shmuel. So it says the Gemara, Rabbi Elazar argues. Rabbi Elazar Omer Nikra Kadosh. It's not called a chote. It's considered to be about it's kedusha, to separate apart. That's what we famously know, that kedusha is poresh atzmecha b'muter lach. That's what kedusha is. It's a loftier level. Of course, we know kedusha doesn't mean holiness. It means to separate it. The kedusha is a woman who is inappropriate. She has separated herself from the pack. It's the void of holiness. Separating ourselves is the idea. So why don't we just say poresh atzmecha b'kadesh atzmecha b'muter lach? So says the Gemara. Let's see if we can support the sheet of Rabbi Elazar. Shene'amar kadosh yeh. I'm sorry, where's the pasuk here? The pasuk reads, Kadosh yeh gadel pera se'ar rosh. You're going to grow out your hair, and that's considered an act of kedusha. This person who just because of his hair, he didn't get a haircut, he was considered a kadosh. A person who restricts himself entirely, referencing the fasting, all the more so he's considered a kadosh. So machlokas Shmuel and Rabbi Lazar, they didn't live in the same generation; they were one generation apart. But there was a machlokas between them as to whether or not fasting has an element of chait, or if fasting has an element of kedusha.
We don't know how long this fast is at this point.
No, but we assume a day. 30-day fast. What does that mean? What? No, the fasting. We're learning from Nazir, as it's why you're making a kal v'chomer from Nazir, that they restricted themselves in one, and it was a chait. And therefore, if you restrict yourself in general from all food for the Taanis, let's call it a day for now, is my assumption. Yeah, no, it's fine. So let's see how we conclude, because the Gemara is going to conclude in a way that makes sense to all of us. But there is a way that a person could fast, and it is deserving of a chait. We'll get there at the top of the Amud Beis. Let's get there. But then the Gemara crisscrosses in the Mari Mekomos and says, "Hey, wait 1 second. Ula Shmuel, who said that fasting is a chait ha'ikri kadosh. What do you do about the fact that the pasuk says that there's kadosh? Kadosh yeh gadel pera." So he says, "Hahu agidul pera koi." That kedusha is only by the hair, but it's not by food. He says, you're right, that's a kadosh move, but to restrict yourself from food, that's not allowed. What about the Rebbe Lazar? The pasuk called him a chote as well. That we know. We know that the Nazir has to bring korbanos when he's done. We treat him as a chote. Ahu, the saiv nafshe. That's because he brought it upon himself that he became a Nazir. That was not right. He shouldn't have done that. But to say that fasting is a problem, in other words, they crisscross the Mari Mekomos, and everybody answers, you can't ask from that Mari Mekom. You're focusing on the wrong piece. Rebbe Lazar, did Rebbe Lazar really say that he's not a chote? How can that be? Ve'amar Rebbe Lazar, l'olam yimod adam atzmo ki'ilu kadosh sharui b'soch me'av, as if the holiness is within you. Shene'emar b'kir b'cha kadosh v'lo avo b'ir, that the sanctity is within you. Rashi at the top of the page, dibur hamaschil ki'ilu kadosh sharui b'soch me'av ki'ilu kol me'av kadosh, as if your whole body is holy. Ve'asr l'hakchisha, and you cannot shut down the desire, so you should be eating. So good. That sounds like a stira within Rabbi Elazar. And the Gemara answers lo kasha. One person is fit to be mitzayer himself, and so you have to know yourself. If this is not your constitution to fast, so then you take it upon yourself and you've shut yourself down for a couple of days. That's not shaykh. That's not the right time to fast. That's not your move. There's other ways to service a Kadosh Baruch Hu when you're trying to get ritzui. So if by you fasting is a disaster, then don't fast. I would never fast. That would never be my option. I asked to Shaila something came up, and I spoke to one of my Rebbeim. He said, you really need to fast. I said, I mamish can't fast. I'm a disaster. So he told me that the Mari Mekomos that we were discussing required that I would therefore give tzedakah in an equivalent amount of whatever it was, a couple of meals. I don't remember the details anymore. It was like 8 years ago. But fasting for me is a bad idea. So you have to know if you're good at fasting. So then great, then fasting's fine for you. That's the distinction in Rabbi Eliezer. Now Reish Lakish takes still a third spin. We've already learned that according to Shmuel, you could be a chote, and according to Rabbi Eliezer, you could be a kadosh. Reish Lakish Amar Nikra Chassid. Right, you're becoming a chassid. Shneimar gomel nafsho ish chesed. But we read the word chassid. The ocher sheiro. I need to learn Tanakh. Yeah. The ocher sheiro achzari. Anyways, the language here is gomel nafsho ish chesed, and we read it as chassid. That's the play on words, and therefore you're a chesed if you give of your body. Amar Rav Sheshes, hi barbe Rav Yasi Taanis. If you have people who are learners, it's their job to learn Torah. So says the Gemara, lechol kalba lesherusa, the dog should eat their food. In other words, it's not shaykh for him to fast. It's some type of colloquialism of the day, and that's what it means. It says the Gemara, as we know that all of our fasts are short. They're only in daylight hours, with the exception of Yom Kippur, which is a pasuk in Chumash. But on the rabbinic side of fasts, which is all the others, the only fast that begins at Shkia is Tisha B'Av. So says the Gemara, we learn it from this line. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba ein Taanis tzibur beBavel ela Tisha B'Av bilvad. That's the only one. That's the only one. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba Amar Reish Lakish. Ein Talmid Chacham Rishai Leisha b'Taanis. A Talmid Chacham is not allowed to fast. Mipnei shemamayid b'meleches shamayim. It reduces what he's capable of doing. Rashi to the left, about 15, 20 lines down. Dibur Hamaschal shemamayid b'meleches shamayim chalashu. He'll become weak. Ve'enu yachal lilmod, and he won't be able to learn. Doesn't say teach, just says learn. We're talking about people who are sitting in kolel. So it says the Gemara that they should not be fasting. How does that play out? Let's say that a person knows that if they fast, their learning is going to be weaker and they're sitting and learning. So we're no poskim, but it seems from the Gemara that it should be usher for them to fast.
The Rabbanim, whenever there's times when they institute, when they're Yom Kippur Cut, that kind of thing, there's usually the caveat for the teachers in the school, they should not fast.
I've never heard that.
Absolutely.
Oh, beautiful. I was a teacher in a school, right? But I never fasted anyway. So I'm the last guy. Nobody ever said it to me, but that's beautiful. I've never heard that. That sounds like an expanded version of this, though, because this is pretty narrow. This is people who are sitting and learning, at least according to Rashi. Okay, at the 2 dots, a third of the way down on Yud Aleph on the base, we're going to end mamish on the last line. It says the Gemara, Ochlin v'shosim mishecha shecha, that we had said that when it comes to most fast days, that one is allowed to eat at night prior to the fast. Let's say there was a person who wanted to be makabel a Taanis on themselves. Let's say they ate the whole night prior. Then when he's in his own Shmona Esrei, he would say the anenu, the appropriate requisite tefillah to add. Now, let's say that he fasts, let's say this was a whole day, it's a Monday. So he fasts the whole day Monday, and then going into halachic Monday night, Tuesday, he's sleeping, lon b'taniso. So then, what about the tefillahs of that night? So says the Gemara, Eino mispalel shel Taanis. He does not, because that wasn't part of his Kabbalah. Yeah, he's still fasting, granted. It's like if you daven at the 72-minute Mariv, you're davening 72 minutes, it's well after Tzeis. You could have eaten already. We don't eat Megillas Esther. We have the same thing. We try not to eat before the mitzvah, but really the fast is over. It really technically is over. We try. Okay, so here too, we say, yeah, you're still fasting, but you don't add in the anenu because that wasn't what you accepted upon yourself. What you accepted upon yourself was to fast throughout the day. Amar Rav Yosef, my kasav Rav Huna. I don't understand this shita of Rav Huna, which seems to separate from saying anenu during the day, but not at night. Sfira le, do we say ein misanan l'shos? Do we say that there's no such thing as a partial fast? Sometimes you'll hear people say, like, tell the kid to fast until chatzos. Do we say that there's no misanan l'shos? Oh, Dilma, or perhaps really misanan l'shos. We do hold misanan l'shos. However, misanan l'shos, when someone is fasting only a short part of the day, eno mispal tefillas Taanis. So which shita is Rav Huna? Do we say that there's no such thing as tefillas shos, as Taanis shos, or do we say there is, but you just don't say anin? Says the Gemara, Amar le, halfway down a little bit more. Amar le, abai lo'olam kasav Rav Huna mi Taanis l'shos, misanan l'shos. There really is such a thing as shorter hours. I'm only going to fast for 3 hours. Hareini Mekabel, a person's going to say that about themselves. And not only that, against the way we understood Rav Huna, that you should even say the anenu davening. This case was different than the case of Rav Huna. Even Rav Huna would agree that if you're still fasting into the night, you should say the anenu. But over here, the reason over here why you wouldn't say anenu is the ika shows to lelia de lo kabila le meikara. Because even when he fasted in the first place, he was eating at night. That was Ochlin V'Shosin the night prior. So the nighttime was never part of his brain in regards to fasting. So here's how it works. A person on Shabbos says, I'm going to fast on Monday. Eats up until Sunday night, up until Amar HaShachar, pounding food. Mutter, no problem. And then he fasts the whole day. He says, Anenu and Shachars. And then the sun sets at 5 o'clock. And all of a sudden, it's dark out. He's like, I'll fast a little bit longer. No Anenu and Mariv. No anenu, because the night was never part of your mindset to fast, ever. Bichlal not. So at night, you're never going to say the anenu. Different, absolutely. That's for sure. So let's say you accept, we don't do that, but because we don't fast at night except for Yom Kippur, except for Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur. But if that was your Kabbalah, then absolutely you'd say anenu. Correct. It's only rooted in this one case where it was the lo kabila le meikara, that at night you had no interest in doing that. That's why you ate. You showed it by eating. You showed it by stuffing your face the night prior.
So in Texas case, then if a person in a personal fast, they wanted to have it span a couple of days, then maybe he should say an Anu and Myrav.
He would. He would. We're just saying at night, right? So I fasted all day Monday. I ate Sunday night. I fasted all day Monday. I said, I'll be from, I'm going to push it a little bit. I won't eat tonight. That Myrav gets no Anu. Why, says the Gemara? Because your initial fast you ate at night. Sunday night. You ate Sunday night. So now it's Monday night. All of a sudden you say Anenu. That was never part of your fast.
But let's say he did.
So if you're Makabel on yourself, I'm fasting for 36 hours straight, then you say Anenu at night.
You get a rare on nighttime on Nenu.
It would only come out by a personal Kabbalah. Correct. Whatever the language is. Yeah. It's intermittent fasting for those who are into that. There it is. Made it into Daf Yomi. Mar Ukva Ikla le Giznak. This is a location of some kind. He went to Giznak and says the Gemara, Bo Mine, when he went there, they asked him 3 shalos. He didn't know the answer to any of them. Awkward when you come in as a guest and don't know. But when you're Mar Ukva, I hope you can get over it because you're a massive Talmud Chacham. Misan on the shos, and Misan on the shos. And the sugya we just learned. Is there such thing as short hours of fasting? Yes or no? Lo haba biyade. He didn't have the answer. Kan and shal nachrim. But we have. We're getting there. It's the week. It's the week. Beautiful. It didn't even cross my mind. That's beautiful. We're 6 days away. Kan and shal nachrim. If you have containers that belong to a goy, usually a reference to containers that we're dealing with wine. So says the Gemara, asur and motarim. Do we have to kasher them? Do a little hagala? What's the halacha? Lo hava biyad. He didn't have the answer. Normally, when it comes to hagala, we are concerned about temperature. But what if it's been sitting there for a very long time? We literally use barrels because of the flavor that comes out of the barrels. So maybe we should assume that the container is absorbed as well. A very reasonable assumption. So do you need hagala, yes or no? When I was in Smicha, my Rebbe brought in a cracked cholent pot, and they're covered in this shiny enamel. Yeah, you could see the cholent seeped all the way through the bottom of the cholent pot. You could see like it was almost all brown, except for the very, very, very bottom couple of millimeters. The cholent soaked all the way through. So what did he do? So lo haba biyadeh, he didn't have the answer to the question. And last question, all of these questions seemingly are disconnected from one another. We know that that Moshe Rabbeinu played a role in the Beis HaMikdash during the Shiva Simei Milum with Korbanos and Avodah on the Beis HaMikdash. He's from the Levi family. He wasn't there. Is he a Kohen? That's a good discussion too. But anyways, what did he wear? He didn't wear the normal Kohen clothes. So lo hava biyadeh. So what did he do? Azal in the singular. Not what did they do? What did he do? This is Mar Ukva. What did Mar Ukva do? He went to the Beis Medrash. Azal the Sha'il Bei Medrasha. Habayshan Lamed. He might be Mar Ukva. He didn't know the answer to the question. Go into the Beis Medrash and ask. So Amruleh, they responded. Hilchasa. First of all, halacha number 1, mis'an on the shos, umispalel and tfilas taanis. We do have short hours of fasting, and you would say anenu during those short hours of fasting. Number 2, hilchasa kankanin shal nachrim la'achar shnei masar chodesh mutarin. That when it comes to the containers of a goy, if you wait 12 months, it's mutter. Fascinating. I saw Rav Willig paskin this way, that if you have a dishwasher that hasn't been used in 12 months, you can switch it from milchik to fleishik. This is the Gemara. The Gemara is very clear, is that as long as you wait that amount of time, maybe the level of pegima in the walls is so significant. It's like just such a nothing that we're not even concerned anymore. It's a good shiloh. But our dishwashers are a little different. The metal parts are easy. That's just run the system on high. That's easy. The hard part is the plastic portions of the dishwasher, because that's a machlokas. Do we assume that you're even able to perform hagala? That we don't do hechsher kelim, but can you do hagala on plastic? So some plastics will melt. So not all plastics do. I have some plastics things, the matitza tubes I use, I sterilize them in an autoclave. They're single use, I toss them, but you can sterilize them. They don't melt at all. Great. So am I extracting anything from the plastic? Oh, that's a good shiloh, but that's what the Gemara would say. And Rav Willig, I presume, was quoting from this Gemara, that 12 months is the line in the sand. And lastly, for tonight, he wore a special white garment, and Rav Kahana Masni b'chalak lavan she'ein lo imra. It was a white garment that had no seams in it. It's not a simple task. That means you have to thread the whole thing in one needle, I presume. I don't know exactly. I'm not a seamstress. I have no idea.
Crochet kind of thing?
I don't know enough to even answer the question, but that's what Rav Kahana said, is that there wasn't even one seam. I'm traveling to Detroit tomorrow. I do plan to be back on time. If I'm seeing that my flights are going to get all messed up, I'll record and post. But Mir Hashem, I should be back on time. Wishing you all a beautiful night.
I think with that